and welcome to another edition of Islamic Finance Weekly, where we discuss the key developments in the industry and opportunities for Nigeria to tap into. For this edition, I have with me Mr. Jude Chiemeka, Head Trading Business Division of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Good to have you on this program.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure. Sir, considering the recent issuance of Souk in 2017 and 2018, the analysis is that the retail participation for both was low. How can this deepen the future issuance of Souk?
Thank you very much. As you know, the Souk is one of those new innovative ways that the DMO is using to try to raise capital for the various infrastructural projects that the federal government is doing. And obviously, just like you said, from what we saw, there was a lot of institutional participation. And I think that's largely due to understanding, because they have a better understanding of what the structure looks like and how it will work. And so one of the key areas that the NSC has been focusing on is around capacity building. We have the X Academy, which is our training platform at the NSC, and we have been engaging quite a lot in that area just to build capacity, especially in the retail space, investor education, because the retail investors need to understand the structure of this instrument and how it works to be able to take full advantage of it. So that is what we have been doing, just to encourage investors to participate by understanding what the instrument is all about. And I think we'll probably see more interest in future issuances as the knowledge gained will begin to manifest.
Right, fantastic. So how will you describe the impact of the two Sukuk issuances on the capital market?
Well, in terms of liquidity, I mean, the two Sukuk that have been issued, like you know, have been listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So that in itself has improved the market liquidity. The first tranche was 100 billion, the second was also 100 billion. But it's also important to point out that the first issuance was done by Osun State, which was 11.4 billion, that was done in 2013. That also was listed on the exchange, and all of this contributes to improving the liquidity in terms of the sort of instruments investors now have access to. So I think it's been a welcome development. It's growing, but we think we're on the right path.
Okay. So as Nigeria grapples with infrastructure financing, why is the Sukuk veritable option for financing?
Good question. The traditional bonds, as you know, the way they have been raised in Nigeria, by the way, the PFAs to a large extent are the major investors in the fixed income space. We've seen they have an asset of close to 26 billion US dollars, and over 47% of that have been used in buying FGM bonds. And so they are very active in that space. But if you look at the dimension of the market and the way the market itself is structured, it does suggest that there's a lot of room for growth, particularly in just looking at the participation level that we have seen. So we expect a lot more participation from the institutional side. We think that just given the sort of the way and manner projects are executed, the Sukuk is a very viable option in the sense that they are typically raised to execute specific projects. So it's not like you raise the capital and then use it for projects or for other expenses other than the intended project. The Sukuk is very, it's almost like a green bond type of thing. So it's very specific as to what you're raising it for, and the way it has been structured is such that it will be ring-fenced, and the capital raise will be used primarily for what the intentions were prior to issuance. If you look at the Osun State one that was raised, they were used to remodel, refurbish schools. About 26 schools benefited from that. And if you look at the Nigerian, the two tranches that were raised, they will be raised specifically for reconstruction and obviously modernization of our roads. And you can see that that has happened across the 6 geopolitical regions. And then the way the whole structure works is that the DMO reinforces the capital raised and their milestones with the contractors, and as they hit those milestones, payments are made, so that there's no issue of abandoned projects, because the projects will have to be completed for them to receive payment. So even the contractors like that sort of arrangement, because there's certainty of getting paid for the job, and they get to do the job, and obviously there will be inspections just to reinforce that discipline. So I think it's a very veritable way of raising capital to finance projects, because the projects will be done in such a manner that it will be phased out, and payments will be made to the contractors as they meet the set milestones for such projects.
So what do you think Nigeria must do to become the destination of non-interest financing?
Well, if you look at the global Islamic financial asset, it's about 2.1 trillion. And if you dimension that, you see that the Souk is about 24% of that. And if you look at what we have done, we are just starting. So there's a lot of room for growth. The key elements conversation around this is perhaps around the risk of finding enough council of experts to ensure that the projects or the instruments being issued are Sharia compliant along with the Sharia principles. That could be a major disincentive. And also, in terms of secondary market liquidity, because of lack of many issuances, the instruments tend not to trade liquidly. But I think one of the ways we can mitigate against that is to ensure that we issue a lot more instruments around this whole Islamic finance. And so investor education is key. And that's why we're taking it very seriously at the NSC. Capacity building, even we haven't seen any corporates issuing, and they have the abilities to issue. So by engaging and by providing the framework in terms of the enabling environment, the rules, which we have done, that will then encourage greater participation, especially from the corporate side, and more participation on the investor side, especially on the retail side of things. We've organized a couple of trainings, a couple of workshops and seminars around Sukuk and Islamic finance. And we intend to do a lot more of that in the future. And we think as we do more trainings, more conversation around this whole Sukuk issuance, a lot more investor participation will increase, and then ultimately the size of the tickets of the transactions themselves will increase to manageable extent. And I think that's what we're doing, and I think we will probably get there in no time.
So in conclusion, the president of the Islamic Development Bank will visit Nigeria by 2020. So what do you think should be the major discussion when he visits Nigeria?
Well, I mean, the conversation will always be around in terms of the instruments, understanding of the instruments, investors' acceptance of the instruments, ensuring that the instruments comply with the principles of Sharia, ensuring that the ability to attract international investors into the space is also key. As you know, the federal government bonds that we issue is not only available to Nigerians. We do have international investors who are attracted by the yields, and they do come seeking for exposure in our type of markets. We'll expect the conversations to also be around how to deepen the market and attract more international investors into this space. That will give the DMO and the federal government the ability to issue larger ticket transactions to attract these internationals. But the good thing is that the capital that will be raised obviously will be ring-fenced and be used specifically for the project. So the idea of completion of those projects and also completion of the whole value chain will obviously lead to the success of the whole issuance. So we expect to have conversation around the dynamics of issuing larger transactions in our local markets.
All right, thank you very much for your contribution. It was an interesting discussion with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that will be all for today's edition. You can send questions and comments to news@proshareng.com, and reporter@prosheng.com. Also, you can engage us on our social media handles displaying on the screen. Many thanks for watching, and bye for now.